Hey there, friends. It's Kaylee.
And Vanessa.
And we're back with another episode of The Struggle is Real.
Because we know the struggle to talk about mental health and be mentally healthy is real.
The struggle is real. You might notice that it looks a bit different around us. We are in our psychology lab today. This is where we conduct research, stress people out, learn a lot about emotions. This is where the magic happens. This is like cribs, but research.
Research cribs, and there's nothing fancy or cool or swimming pools in here at all.
No. So far in our series, we've been talking a lot about what mental health really is, what mental illness really is, and how things like our emotions and how we manage our emotions and our social support can play a big role in our mental health.
We've been focusing a lot on things that you can do in your daily life to help improve your mental health. But something we haven't talked about so far is how to seek professional support if you feel like you can't cope with your own mental health.
And what we find is that so many people don't really know when is the right time to seek help, what seeking help looks like, or how they would go about getting help.
This week, we interviewed Dr. Brad McNeil, who's a clinical psychologist here in Kingston, Ontario. Dr. McNeil has been working in the community for 10 years, and so he's a great resource for explaining how this getting help process actually works.
So Dr. McNeil has a lot of experience working in the community, but our favorite thing about him is that he's really good at putting himself in the shoes of someone who actually needs help. So he's really good at identifying why it's so scary to seek help when you need it, and what the barriers are that come up when you actually try to seek help.
The other thing that we really love about Brad is somehow he was able to do this video and the podcast without swearing, something me and Kaylee have yet to do. So,
Never ever.
So amazing. Really amazing. Some of the things that we talked about with Dr. McNeil is how does somebody know when they should actually seek support? And what the heck does that process look like once you decide that you do need to seek support? And what should you look for? What should you avoid? And how can you help other people who might need support?
And because he's super wicked smart, we're just going to let him answer all these questions for you.
We hope you enjoyed as much as we did.
Sure. My name is Dr. Brad McNeil. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist in Ontario, and I work in an adult outpatient mental health setting in a hospital. And I have worked in outpatient mental health for the past decade with children, adolescents, families, couples, and adults in supporting them at times where they may feel like they're not coping optimally in life. So some of the signs that you should be aware of are if you notice that you're more withdrawn or not interacting socially with others as much as you used to, or just even when you are with other people feeling detached in those situations, or like they're kind of not as fun as they used to be. That's something that you should really be mindful as a sign that you may not be coping optimally. You can also be aware of changes in your mood, so that can be things like increased irritability or frustration, or something we call the negative cognitive triad, or we refer to it as just a fancy way of saying having a more negative view of the future, a more negative view of the self, and a more negative view of the world as a whole. So negative view of the future, like things are never going to get better; negative view of the self, those judgmental and self-critical comments; and a negative view of the world, like somehow the world is not a very good place, and all focusing in or being mindful of all of the negative things. You can also be aware of physical signs. So if there's changes to your sleep pattern, so are you sleeping more than usual? Are you taking more naps than usual? Are you sleeping a lot less than usual, or having difficulty falling asleep? Has there been changes to your appetite, a greater appetite or less of an appetite? Feeling more exhausted or not having energy through the day are all signs you want to be aware of that you may not be coping as optimally as you had before. So one of the things that you can consider when you think about a timeline for seeking professional support is around seeking professional support for other concerns you may have. So if you were to develop a cold or flu and you were to be really concerned about that, you would call your doctor's office and book an appointment within the next week to 2 weeks. It's very much the same thing, and the same idea can be applied to when you're feeling like you're more stressed or you're not coping coping in the same way as you typically would within kind of that 1 to 2 week period, that's really when you should be reaching out to try to get some of that support, some of that professional support. It can be really confusing in terms of, are my problems big enough to seek support at this time, or should I just kind of wait and see if they kind of resolve on their own? And so people will run the risk, or you may run the risk of waiting too long to seek support. And so one of the things we know is that the sooner you seek help, the better oftentimes you do, and the better you do in receiving the treatment support and some of the skills that we know can be really, really effective for helping you manage better. So one of the major barriers for folks when they are seeking help and support is the stigma that surrounds the process, and also the stigma of not coping well with situations. And so what's important to remember is it doesn't mean anything about you as a person. Everybody from time to time will have stressors or life transitions or difficulties that come up, and it's important to be able to seek help in those situations, just like anybody would. So another barrier to seeking help is that people will sometimes think that, isn't therapy the same as just talking to a family member or friend, or getting support from a family member or friend? Where it is much different in that you're learning skills that we know can be really, really helpful for helping you cope in more optimal ways. Another barrier that will come up for people is the idea that, isn't therapy just about venting and talking endlessly about the things that I'm struggling with or my problems, where we'll never actually really get to solving things or fixing them. And that is not the case. Therapy is about kind of learning skills that will help you to cope in more effective ways. One of the other barriers is feeling that therapy will go on and on forever, or that somehow therapy will be endless, when that's also not the case as well. Most therapies have a distinct timeline between 12 to 20 sessions, where we know that we should be measuring how you're doing all the way through with our own observations, but also kind of what you're saying in terms of your progress in learning some of the skills, because you're the expert in your own life and your own care. And lastly, people will often worry, well, what if I come to therapy and I talk about my problems and it'll actually make them worse? And one of the things we want for people to know is that talking about your problems actually helps with managing them in a more effective way, and being able to have an unbiased sounding board to really talk about strategies to help you cope and manage better. So you may have some ideas already about what therapy actually looks like, when really that might not be the case. So people will oftentimes come into therapy thinking that they're going to lay out on a couch and talk about their history or their family or their past experiences, when really that's not what therapy's about currently. Therapy is really structured and organized, and it's really planned and predictable and under your control, so that it's a safe and comfortable environment for you to be able to talk about the things you want to talk about with your therapist. As part of the process, we talk about things like consent and confidentiality, which are just a fancy way of saying everything that we talk about in therapy is absolutely confidential, and we never talk about things outside of therapy to anyone else. And consent is the idea that you have the absolute choice to leave therapy at any time, with no penalty whatsoever. So you get to decide if the therapy is working for you, and also if the therapist is the right fit for you as well, which is an incredibly important piece to seeking help. One of the things that you can consider is that it's really important to find somebody who's a good fit. And I, just like other regulated health professionals, would encourage you to shop around a bit until you find a therapist or a support person who is a really good fit, who you have what we would refer to as a good therapeutic alliance with. And all that is a way of saying, I feel comfortable and safe working with this person, and I really feel like we can learn some skills together, and they can coach me in coping much more effectively. If you have somebody in your life who is struggling, one of the important things to remember is there's usually not one right way to approach them. Oftentimes the most important thing is that you do approach them and you talk about how you feel. And so one of the things we learn as regulated health professionals and therapists is to never give advice. And so in approaching someone, try to inhibit that natural human response to try to give advice or fix the problem, and instead just talk about how you're feeling. You know, I'm feeling really concerned about you. I'm really feeling like I'd like to help. If you talk about how you feel, it's oftentimes helpful in opening up the lines of communication and working collaboratively with the person that you really care about to get them the help and support they need. So you may speak with the person about things that you've noticed, that I've noticed that you're more withdrawn than you typically are, you don't seem to be enjoying activities like you used to, and that makes me feel really concerned and worried about you because I care. And talking with them about how you feel and being able to help to link them up with the types of supports they need can be an incredibly collaborative way of helping them seek support. This may cause a small disruption in the relationship or some hurt feelings, but in the long run they're going to be really thankful about your level of concern and care for them, and that you're really helping them find the right types of support. One of the most important things that you should remember about seeking help is that you can seek help at absolutely any time. It doesn't have to be for a major stressor or a life event. It can be at any time when you're feeling like you need somebody unbiased to kind of reach out to, or to have a little bit of extra support or learn some skills that will help to help you manage better in life. One of the examples I really like is the quicksand metaphor. And the quicksand metaphor is the idea that when you fall into quicksand, the natural human reaction is to struggle in the quicksand and move around. And the more that you struggle and move around, the faster you actually sink down in the quicksand. It can be much the same when you're struggling with stressors in your life or not coping as optimally as maybe you have in the past. You can feel very much like, I can fix it myself, or I should be able to do this, and the more you struggle, the more it pulls you down into the stressor or down into the quicksand. What we actually want for people to do is to pause and recognize the supports that are available around them and be still and calm in the quicksand of their own stress or life, so that they can reach out and grab a hand that might be helpful, or be able to get the support they need.
We know that was a lot of information, but hopefully that process of seeking help and knowing when you should seek help is a little less daunting and terrifying.
Mm-hmm. And we do need to stop to recognize that this is the process here in Ontario, in Canada. We know that you may be living literally anywhere. We don't know. The wonders of YouTube mean that you could be literally anywhere in the world when you're watching this, and so the process could be very different where you are. But we really encourage you to take the time to find out how that works where you are.
If this is a topic you find really interesting and you're just dying to hear more about it, we actually talked a lot more in depth in the podcast. We couldn't fit it all in the video.
There's too much wisdom to share.
Too much wisdom. And so if you want to know more about this and hear more examples and stories, then go listen to our podcast, because it's really, really great.
Another really important thing that is covered in the podcast that's not in this video is a list of all the most up-to-date evidence-based practices that you should be seeking out if you need help with a specific psychological problem. Brad goes into a lot of detail about this in the podcast, but we couldn't cram it into our video because it's just too much information. So if you want to know exactly what kind of treatments are the most up-to-date evidence-based effective treatments for whatever psychological problem you may be experiencing, please go check out our website, thestruggleisreal.live, and head on over to our resources page.
Challenge for this week is to check in with yourself and see how well are you coping right now.
Check in to see, is there anything that I could be feeling better about in my life? Am I feeling a little bit too stressed, or am I not handling the specific situation that happened in my life? Am I still feeling resentful about something? Is there anything that you think you could benefit from just talking to someone about?
Remember, don't wait until the last minute. If you just have a slight little problem, it's a great thing to go talk to somebody about it.
It's just like if you weren't feeling well, physically. You wouldn't wait until your limb started falling off to go talk to somebody. You'd probably go see a doctor as soon as it started impeding your normal day-to-day life. That's exactly how we want you to treat your mental health.
Exactly. The challenge is don't wait.
The challenge is don't wait.
If you feel like you're coping really well and you're just killing it at life, something really great to do is to always have like a plan.
Yes.
If you feel like you can't handle things anymore, what are the supports that you can seek out? If you can just pull that like right out of your pocket or in your phone, that's awesome instead of trying to figure that out. Plus being stressed, that's so difficult.
Exactly. It's the exact thing as how Vanessa and I talked a while ago about how it's really good to have a plan for your emotions before they get too big. So being like, ooh, when I get too high on anger, this is what I should just do right away. This is the exact same thing. Instead of waiting until you're super stressed to try and make a plan, try and figure it out in advance. If, this crazy thing happens in my life, it's just too much for me to handle, what am I going to do about it? So we know that the struggle to talk about mental health and be mentally healthy is real.
But hopefully after today, it's a little bit easier.
Should we just do the normal intro?
Yeah, you know that I can't do it.
Okay. Hey there, friends. It's Vanessa.
And Kaylee.
Did I do it again? Fuck! I tried to say my own name. Okay.
I know you just want to be me, it's fine.
This is really hard.
Get away from me!
Alright, so we know the struggle to talk about mental health and be mentally healthy is real.
But hopefully after this week, it's a little less real.
What?